All right, y'all. I'm starting to slowly get more professional. I can finally hear myself back from my microphone, making sure my audio is working. I finally downloaded the microphone software so I can play around with these settings. And I'm giggling because I've had this microphone for probably over 6 months now. And I am just now getting in that routine. So, yay. All right. So, I am Heather, and this is Underwater Panther. This channel is focused on astro-psychology, shadow integration, culture, power, and identity. But more than anything, it's about understanding how humans think, decide, and make meaning, especially during periods of personal and collective instability, which is extremely apparent, especially to millennials. I work at the intersection of psychology, astrology, moral cognition, generational dynamics, and systems analysis. I absolutely love architecture. I love old building architecture, as well as psychological architecture. It is my thing. So that means I'm not here to tell you what to think or which side to be on. I'm here to slow things down and examine the underlying mechanisms, how belief forms, how identity shapes perception, how power operates, and how different minds experience truth, threat, and values differently. A lot of my work looks at what happens when institutions lose legitimacy, so we're talking religion, politics, culture, and relationships, and how the psychological burden of meaning, morality, and regulation quietly shifts onto individuals. When this happens, confusion, polarization, and moral injury tend to follow. I'm trying to block that light behind me. I need to figure that out. I got a whole bunch of new lights, and the one right below the hat is actually driving me insane. So, yeah, I apologize. All right, so my goal is to make those dynamics visible so they can be understood rather than acted out unconsciously. You'll see many different series on this channel, some focused on relationships and polarity, some on generational psychology, some on shadow work, some on astrology as a symbolic language of the psyche, and some on culture and power structures. These topics aren't separate to me, they're different expressions of the same underlying patterns. I don't believe in tearing systems down for the sake of it. I'm certainly going to say that up front. I've had a recent commenter talk about tearing down all of religion, and I just don't subscribe to that. Although I'm very spiritual, yeah, I don't believe in tearing systems down for the sake of it. And I don't believe in outsourcing morality to ideologies, identities, or institutions. I believe in discernment, integration, and personal agency, and in learning how to hold complexity without collapsing into certainty. If you're here for simple answers, this may not be the right space. But if you're interested in understanding why things feel the way they do internally and collectively, you're in the right place. So let's get into it. I am an Aquarian INTJ mind and Capricorn ISTJ stellium. So I absolutely love breaking systems down. All right. So in the last video, when belief replaces thinking, we talked about what happens when cognition gives way to identity, how people stop evaluating reality and start defending conclusions, and how moral judgment erodes when belief becomes fused with who we are rather than how we think. That conversation resonated deeply, and I want to pause for a moment to explain why I am continuing this thread. This series grew out of two earlier discussions on this channel: when faith becomes a brand and why American politics is acting like a late stage empire. Those videos weren't meant as political commentary in the conventional sense. They were diagnostic. They were attempts to name a deeper pattern that cuts across religion, politics, culture, and psychology. A pattern that shows up whenever institutions lose legitimacy and people are left trying to orient themselves without trustworthy moral containers. And all of this orientation work literally came from Three Eye Atlas. Trying to understand the path of Three Eye Atlas was extremely just interesting to me. Very interesting. I looked at it through an indigenous astro-psychological lens, and it was literally all about orientation. I'm just laughing because it brought me back. So, the danger right now isn't disagreement. Healthy societies can tolerate disagreement. The danger is unexamined moral certainty. Belief systems operating invisibly, fused to identity, immune to reflection, and enforced socially rather than embodied personally. I also got down this rabbit hole because of the Charlie Kirk and TP, what is it? TP USA? TP USA. That's probably not it, but I am literally making a joke and a joke. But anyways, combining religion and politics is extremely dangerous. That kid was very young. I'm sure he had good intentions, but I'm also sure that he knew the danger. So, anyways, that's not what this video is about. Um, all right, so that's why I'm feathering this out instead of collapsing it into one take. These aren't soundbite topics, they're layered, and if we rush them, we recreate the very problem we're trying to understand. So, in this video, we're going one layer deeper. If belief replacing thinking is the surface level problem, then what we're really dealing with underneath is shadow. Just give me a moment. I gotta look at something real quick. Hopefully, I don't bring the whole world down. It is TP USA. I don't know why that's actually hysterical to me. TP USA. I don't know why I've never thought of it that way. That is the actual name of it. And yeah, I'm not gonna go there. I'm just gonna go. All right. So, anyways, wow. All right. So, this video is called Faith, Shadow, and the Collapse of Moral Authority. I apologize. It's not a laughing matter by any stretch of the imagination, but oh my goodness, I followed the money and looked at all the businesses there and the mega churches and the original donors and mentors. I have done such a deep dive on that and have my own opinions. So, anyways, because whenever a society loses its ability to integrate complexity, it doesn't become neutral, it becomes polarized. We are extremely polarized right now more than ever, I would say. And it's wild to me because we have so much information, yet we are more polarized than ever. Make it make sense. What can't be integrated gets split. What can't be faced gets projected. And what can't be held consciously gets acted out unconsciously. Shadow isn't evil. Shadow is simply what a system refuses to acknowledge about itself. On an individual level, shadow forms when parts of our experience are judged as unacceptable, unsafe, or threatening to belonging. On a collective level, shadow forms when entire cultures suppress realities that contradict their self image. And when shadow isn't integrated, it does not disappear. It governs behavior from the background. This is where moral authority begins to collapse. Historically, religion provided a shared moral framework, not because it was perfect or benign, but because it offered coherence. It gave people a way to orient values, responsibility, and meaning within a shared symbolic system. But when institutions lose credibility for multitudes of reasons, when they no longer reflect lived reality, their moral authority fractures. People don't stop needing morality, they stop trusting the institution that once held it. So I'm going to take a quick coffee break. You can probably see my breath because I have my big bay door open to have internet, and it is freezing in here. I've got a space heater blowing and a heating blanket per normal. All right, so constantly struggling with my voice. All right, so excuse me. People don't stop needing morality, they stop trusting the institutions that once held it. And when moral authority collapses, it doesn't leave a vacuum for long. Something else rushes in to replace it. Politics becomes moralized, ideology becomes sacred, identity becomes doctrine. And suddenly, belief systems that were once explicitly spiritual are replaced by secular ones that function the exact same way, just without admitting it. Rituals change, language changes, but psychologically, the structure remains. What's dangerous here isn't belief itself, it's the denial of belief. When people insist they're being purely rational, while operating from unexamined moral frameworks, shadow deepens. Because now the belief system can't be questioned, it's invisible to the person holding it. This is why shadow intensifies during institutional collapse. People feel unmoored. Authority is fragmented, trust is broken. And instead of integrating uncertainty, societies split into moral camps. Each side externalizes shadow onto the other. Each side believes they are the conscience of the culture. And each side becomes incapable of seeing its own blind spots. Moral certainty becomes louder precisely when moral clarity is weaker. When shadow governs a system, morality becomes performative instead of ethical. The question stops being what is the right action and becomes which side am I on? Ethics turn into signaling. Compassion becomes conditional. Accountability only applies outward, never inward. And paradoxically, the more moralized a culture becomes, the less moral it actually is. Because true morality requires integration. Integration means holding contradiction. It means acknowledging that good intentions can produce harm, that righteousness can justify cruelty, and that power doesn't stop being power just because it wears the language of virtue. Shadow integration doesn't mean excusing harm. It means understanding it well enough to stop repeating it. When a culture refuses shadow, it creates purity tests. And purity tests destroy moral reasoning because they eliminate context. Once purity becomes the standard, any deviation becomes betrayal. Nuance becomes threat, questions become heresy, and ethical growth becomes impossible. This is why moral authority cannot be enforced. It can only be embodied. The moment morality is imposed through identity, fear, or coercion, it stops being moral and starts being authoritarian, regardless of which ideology is doing it. What we're watching right now isn't simply political polarization. It's a psychological regression under pressure, a return to tribal cognition when integration feels too difficult. And until that's recognized, no amount of information, debate, or policy will fix it. Because this isn't a thinking problem, it's an integration problem. So in the next video, we're going to bring this all the way down into the psyche itself, into how different minds process values, threats, and identity differently. Because once you understand that moral conflict isn't just ideological, but cognitive, everything changes. And from there, we can finally talk about responsibility, not as punishment, but as agency. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to leave a comment on your thoughts and feelings below. I do read all of the comments and respond. Please keep it mature and like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.